Number 10 is Vulcanisadora. Vulcanisadora is a spiritual sequel to Joel Petrakis' 2014 film Buzzard, starring the same two characters, Petrakis himself as Derek, and the wonderful Joshua Burge as Marty. Vulcanisadora follows these two friends as they trudge through the Michigan woods together on some sort of mission, the end goal of which is only hinted at as they progress. Right from the opening credits, though, we do learn a lot about the film. We're met with this juxtaposition of grand operatic music and screaming heavy metal with the distant wail of ambulances kind of signaling the emotional peaks and valleys that we're about to journey through. Vulcanisadora is a pretty dark yet introspective foray into masculinity, friendship, and fatherhood. Fatherhood, in fact, is very central to the writing of this film, as Petrakis started on the screenplay after becoming a father. His son Solo even has a role in the film. It's difficult to say too much more without going into spoiler territory, but for those of you who might be familiar with some of the director's previous work, it has much of that same raw indie punk spirit, but with a little bit more introspection and personal weight. Number 9 is Eephus. Carson Lund's debut feature moves at the same easygoing tempo as the pitch that it's named after. Slow, looping, and a little bit magical. The film looks at one last beer league showdown between two teams before a planned development paves their diamond into the past. Plot is not the point. Lund, who co-wrote this with Nate Fisher and Michael Basta, is more concerned with atmosphere. As the film opens, these players drift in one by one, and we start to understand that there's more than just a baseball game about to go down. The film is such a perfect depiction of this adult male friendship, the idea that these men only connect because something is organized for them. This sport is the only thing that brings them together. There are discussions about meeting for drinks once the league is finished, but these are quickly dismissed. There are moments of vulnerability between these men, but they're few and far between, and they're hidden beneath this kind of protective layer. It's a subtle but powerful reminder that friendship is important, that community matters, and whether it's through baseball or something else, it really does resonate. Number 8 is Bring Her Back. Bring Her Back is the second film from director-brother duo Danny and Michael Philippou after their breakout debut in Talk to Me a couple of years ago. This second feature provides some pretty solid evidence that the Philippou brothers are here to stay in the genre filmmaking world. The story here centers on two step-siblings, Andy and Piper, as they're placed into a foster home after the death of their last remaining parent. Here they meet their foster mother, Laura, played by the absolutely incredible Sally Hawkins, who delivers the standout performance of the film. Hawkins is able to so perfectly bring us a character that makes us slightly uneasy from the first moment we see her, but is also able to seamlessly shape-shift back into a seemingly caring mother at the drop of a dime. Interestingly, Hawkins got so into character for Bring Her Back that she actually helped decorate the set, which was her character's home, with little knickknacks and trinkets from secondhand shops that she picked up herself. Outside of Hawkins' performance, what also works really well here is the intensely layered sound design. I won't reveal the specific plot details, but there's one scene in particular with the sound of metal scraping on teeth that was so perfectly, terribly executed. That moment becomes even more impactful when you realize that part of the design came from director Danny Philippou dragging a real knife against his own teeth. Bring Her Back also dives into grief and what people do to avoid confronting it, honestly. But mostly it's an extremely creepy ride that showcases this new director duo and their ability to make interesting horror films for the modern age. Number 7 is Warfare. Warfare is co-written and co-directed by Alex Garland, who we know from projects like Civil War and Ex Machina, alongside Ray Mendoza. Mendoza is a veteran of the Iraq War and actually met Garland on the set of Civil War, where he was serving as a military advisor and choreographer for some of the battle sequences. The two got to talking, and the rest is history. Warfare is rooted in Mendoza's lived experiences in Iraq, and the characters depicted in the film are based on real people with whom Mendoza served. I think it is important to acknowledge some of the broader discourse around this film, as some folks have stood in opposition to the project, suggesting that it is an inherent glorification of an unjust war, and while I think this is a worthwhile conversation to have, we're going to stick with the discussion on a purely filmic basis, which is not to minimize any critiques that may exist. What does make Warfare a very interesting film is that it's less concerned with traditional film beats and character arcs and is more concerned with simply depicting war as it is. We don't really learn anything deep or significant about our characters' backstories. There aren't love interests or any real subplots. We're simply put into these moments as we watch war unfold, a lot of which is shot in real time. As a result, there's no hero's journey, nor is there any sort of catharsis. This makes sense, of course, when we understand that it's an attempt to depict war as it is, without heroes and without happy endings. I appreciate how the film does not particularly propagandize the American military and how it makes at least a small attempt to humanize innocent civilians who are caught in a conflict that they didn't sign up for. If you're interested in what appears to be one of the most accurate depictions of war in the modern age, then it's worth a watch. Number 6 is Friendship. Friendship had me laughing out loud in the theater more than I have in years. It's the directorial debut of Andrew DeYoung, who has spent most of his career in the world of TV and short-form comedy, but still he managed to get his personal friend Tim Robinson on board, and there really wasn't anyone else who could have played this role. For those of you familiar with Robinson's sketch show, I Think You Should Leave, the humor is very much in that vein. There's a lot of absurdism and painful secondhand embarrassment, but I also think that it's a lot more than just a feature-length sketch. The film follows Robinson as he desperately tries to become best friends with his neighbor, played by Paul Rudd, while simultaneously attempting to salvage his marriage with his wife, played by Kate Mara. Because we stick with one character for the full 90 minutes, we develop a stronger connection to Robinson compared to shorter sketches of just a couple minutes. This, paired with the fact that DeYoung and his DP Andy Rydzuski shot this film more like a drama than a comedy, makes it stand out more than your run-of-the-mill buddy comedy. It does sneak in some heavy material into the runtime as well, exploring ideas of male loneliness and emotional repression, but they don't hit particularly hard when you're laughing for more than half of the time you're in the theater, which was the case for me. Number 5 is Hallow Road. Hallow Road is a pretty trim, real-time thriller that never takes its foot off the figurative gas. British-Iranian director Babak Anvari keeps the camera almost entirely inside a car, where we have Frank, a stressed corporate fixer, played by Matthew Rhys, and his wife Mads, a paramedic, played by Rosamund Pike, as they hurtle toward the forest road that gives the film its name. Their daughter Alice had stormed off after a big fight, and her now terrified voice crackles through the speakerphone, pleading for help from a very remote stretch of woodland that is favored by local teens for late-night smoke sessions. As they continue to drive and talk on the telephone with their daughter, they are forced to face the darkest parts of themselves. And Babak Anvari does something interesting. He captures the outside world on grainy 16mm and captures the inside of the car with very razor-sharp digital form, kind of transforming this car into a psychological prison which traps these parents but also us as viewers. Rosamund Pike and Matthew Rhys carry the weight for this entire film, and a little Easter egg, I would stick around for the closing credits, but the two of them are absolutely brilliant, as they have to be in this cramped single-car location as they explore guilt, and we realize by the end exactly what is happening. Number 4 is Together. Together exceeded almost all of my expectations and ended up being one of my favorite films at South by Southwest this year. I will say before diving any further that I don't have time to get into any of the ongoing legal details surrounding the film. There has been a claim that the idea was stolen, and there is a lawsuit in progress, so you can look up the details for that if you want. But I'm here to talk about the film. Together is another debut feature, this time from Michael Shanks, and stars real-life couple Dave Franco and Alison Brie. The film follows these two as they relocate to the countryside and their relationship unravels. It explores themes of codependency and identity through this body horror lens, and it does so really effectively. Shanks kind of masterfully weaves between opposing tones, one second very menacing and horrifying, and then the next second awkward or hilarious. The cinematography of the film also mirrors this sort of contrast, as we have claustrophobic, shadowy indoor scenes set against vivid outdoor landscapes, kind of serving as a visual representation of the internal struggles of Dave Franco's character Tim. Ultimately, Together is about the unsettling fear of losing your identity within the confines of a relationship, and the horror elements in the film give physical shape to this fear. However, Shanks is also clear to depict the beauty possible within committed love, even while acknowledging how terrifying this sort of commitment can be. Number 3 is I'm Still Here. I'm Still Here is a project that can be considered a late 2024 release, but because it didn't have any real non-festival release in North America prior to 2025, I'm including it here. After its relative success at the Oscars earlier this year, many folks are familiar with it, and they should be. It comes from director Walter Saez, who is known for films like Central Station and The Motorcycle Diaries, and it's an adaptation of Marcelo Rubin's Paiva 2015 memoir. The film so beautifully and terrifyingly contrasts moments of calm and serenity with a sense of impending doom. This is articulated right from the opening credits, with Fernanda Torres' character Eunice Paiva in the water, surrounded by soft crashes of waves, only to be abruptly thrown into this sense of dissonance as we hear military helicopters loudly circling above. This sort of push and pull is echoed visually throughout the film as well. On the beaches of Rio, we get these deep, warm oranges, almost like the sun is constantly setting, giving us a golden glow. But as the film progresses, we cut to dark, shuttered interrogation rooms with only small slivers of light. And what also makes these visuals come to life is Saez's choice to shoot on multiple film stocks. We get grainy, raw Super 16 mil as the daughter in this family tries to escape into her own world. The frenetic energy we see in those frames mirrors her impulsiveness and desire to explore. But then when the film shifts to more intimate domestic moments, Saez uses 35 mil footage that's a bit richer and more textured and wraps us in a comfortable, lived-in family dynamic. Whether you consider I'm Still Here to be a 2024 or a 2025 film, the simple fact remains it is one of the most powerful pieces on sacrifice and the love of a family in recent memory. And if you haven't seen this film that explores a very real history in Brazil, you definitely need to add it to your list. Number 2 is Sorry, Baby. Sorry Baby is an incredible debut feature from Ava Victor, who also happens to be the writer and the star of the film. No big deal. She has managed to create something that is simultaneously unsettling and rooted in complex and very real emotion, while also being deadpan when it needs to be, and incredibly funny throughout. In a sense, this structure mirrors the way that many of us, including Ava's protagonist Agnes, deal with trauma. By cracking jokes, by deflecting, and by desperately trying to hold on to those slivers of light in a very dark room. Sorry Baby moves through these tonal shifts as we follow Agnes in the time before and after a traumatic event. Its structure is cyclical. We end where we start off, but Over the course of the runtime, we're able to explore 5 years of Agnes's life. Ava Victor is supported by strong performances from folks like Naomi Ackie and Lucas Hedges, and the film isn't just well acted, but Victor has also put together one of the best screenplays of the year, even winning the best screenplay at Sundance. Most first-time directors find it difficult to lean into the mundane and the slow and the subtly uncomfortable, but this film is unafraid to challenge some of these traditional conventions and instead forces us to just sit with Agnes's pain through long, locked-off shots and very intentional restraint. This is the latest of a string of brilliant first-time features produced by Barry Jenkins and his team at Pastel, following films like Aftersun and All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt. Number 1 is Sinners. Who knows where Sinners will end up on my end-of-the-year list, but as of right now, I'm still riding the high that it gave me when I watched it on the big screen. Anyone who knows me knows that I have a fairly limited affinity for big-budget productions, but this $90 million project is a pretty clear exception to that rule. What Coogler has done here defies not just my own kind of normative assumptions, but really it defies the odds when it comes to genre and box office success, among many more. I imagine that folks are familiar with this film already, but for the few of you who aren't, it follows Michael B. Jordan as both Smoke and Stack, two brothers who return to their hometown in Mississippi after spending years in Chicago. They bring with them a pretty good sum of cash and ambitions to open a juke joint, but they're met with many an obstacle, from old lovers to, of course, vampires. Music, though, forms the emotional heartbeat of Sinners, and it shapes both its themes and its narrative structure. We have beautiful blues music, but also some Irish folk tradition, bringing together parallels of musical expression as forms of resilience that are born from trauma and transformed into powerful communal experiences. Sinner also has the, I want to say, undeniable scene of the year so far, a roughly 4-minute sequence inside the juke joint where we have a blues performance that illustrates the transcendental nature of music as we see ancestors, we see people yet to come, we see the art, we see the culture and the community that has so often been pushed into basements and back rooms. If you haven't seen Sinners yet, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when this scene hits. Hopefully, this is one of many future examples of artists being given the tools required to craft their own unique, large-scale stories on screen instead of just funding another sequel.